So that's I just picked up this guitar from not having played in a couple years since I was in England. This was in my parents' house, and I've been practicing it a little bit. Sometimes I get little songs stuck in my head or little bits of songs stuck in my head, and it's a nice to get them out, give them life. That's actually the little guitar solo from "Till There Was You," originally in the uh, musical Music Man, about sort of con artist going through a town and sort of finding himself unable to leave by various, uh, inspirations of fate. Um, but the Beatles ended up doing it, and I think it was actually a superior version of it. So I've always liked that guitar solo, if you would call it, just a few bars, and it's nice to play. And that's actually one of the reasons why I bought this sort of Spanish classical guitar, because I do like that sound, and it's not too loud because if you have a steel string guitar, it can get pretty loud. Although you can't really mute this the same way with the palm of your hand. Um, anyway, I love playing the guitar, especially uh, when I'm just watching TV. I can just sort of do scales or just fiddle around a little bit. I was doing that all day yesterday. Well, not all day, but a good chunk of the day. Watching football. I'm not usually a big football guy anymore. I used to like it when I was younger, but I don't know. I just stopped liking it so much. I think mostly because uh, they've changed the rules so much that I hardly recognize the game, and I think a lot of them are end up they throw too many flags, too many penalties, and it's very hard to watch. But in the last couple of weeks, I've been watching it largely because I've had a lot of free time on my hands, and so yeah, there were really good games. Cincinnati game, Cincinnati and Kansas City went to overtime. Los Angeles and San Francisco came down to the last couple minutes. Really quality stuff, which usually means that the Super Bowl is going to be a dud, but what can you do? You got to watch to find out. It's all about entertainment, really. Not that's something I always felt like the professional sports, the athletes, and the owners have forgotten over the last 20 years. They've forgotten that their role is just to entertain us by showing us really good football. If both sides show, look, they really put in their best and they're somewhat evenly matched, you're going to get a good game. And there's a little bit of a nail biter. I was pulling for Cincinnati. Uh, Mostly because they've had a hell of a time sports wise. I don't think they've won anything since the Reds won back in 1990. Um, anyway, so another thing that happened this weekend is my wife was she's a bit of a snorer, and sometimes it's a bit too much for me. So I went downstairs and read, finished Mark Twain's. Can't really tell because the title, the cover is so busy. A King Arthur, a King, a Connecticut Yankee in King Arthur's Court. Um, I had never read before. I actually remember getting this book back in 1989. You can actually see the date there on the back of this little sticker here, back when stickers on books were a new thing, especially with this little barcode there. Anyway, I remember getting it down in Ocean City. I think because my sister had this as required reading, but I ended up reading it when we were down there. So it's been sitting in my parents' bookshelves for decades. So anyway, I picked it up and started reading it, and I would say it's very typical of Mark Twain. I've only read Tom Sawyer, uh, Huckleberry Finn, and I was about to say Huckleberry Hound Dog, but you know, I read some of his short stories, like The Man Who Corrupted Hadleyburg, and a few of his other bits and bobs, like Life on the Mississippi, was about his life as a steamboat uh, pilot, which is interesting. Um, so the book, if you've read anything about Mark Twain, you'll know that it's sort of two parts to every book. There's the story, which he writes very picaresque style books where it's a lot of little adventures throughout the whole thing. Much like, I guess the best example of this is Don Quixote, which is Don Quixote's a bit meta in all this because Don Quixote is so obsessed with these picaresque books that he actually starts thinking that he is a knight errant and he has to go around saving, you know, he has to go around killing villains, saving princesses, and all that. That he ends up causing a lot of damage to himself, those around him, and just to anybody who happens to be in his way that looks like an enemy to him. And so, but that with that said, is that there are the adventures within the book, but every once in a while he'll intersperse a little commentary. In this, he talks a little bit about the nature of patriotism. Uh, that what I actually found quite interesting is that he talks about patriotism as you're patriotic, which means your loyalty is not to the government of your country. The government is just sort of a servant of the the country, but ultimately you're loyal to your country, which means the people in it and the territory in it. And those are the most important things, not the government. Which I think that people today, you think that with all this extra knowledge and having more experience and books like this and thinkers uh, who write on the subject, that it's important not to say that society is the government or the government is the society. They're not one and the same. There's an overlap there, but ultimately the the country is not the same as the government. Uh, and he also goes on about the nature of democracy, obviously being in the time of King Arthur. Um, he basically the story is that there's a mechanic from Connecticut who gets bonked in the head, and this is originally from like the 1800s, I think, published in 1889, and he this mechanic somehow gets whacked in the head with an iron bar and ends up transported back in time. And because he's sort of smart and understands, scientific thing and engineering things, but also the education system, and he knows what's possible, obviously, because he lived through it. He creates this whole little, I don't know what you call it, like a series of, like an academy, where he teaches people how to read and write, and then perform scientific experiments, and then create things like telephones, telegraphs, even the railroads towards the end. And ultimately, he's trying to destroy the old system, the old sort of feudal system that is under King Arthur's court, which is interesting because obviously King Arthur was a legend. Uh, but if you've read enough Arthurian folklore, um, it's actually kind of true to it that you don't. The only person that there are two people in it that you actually get, from other stories, you get to know, and that's Arthur and Merlin. Merlin has it in for this guy who I think they only mention his name once, but throughout the text they call him Sir Boss, which is an interesting name. And Merlin has it in for him because obviously this guy has proven to the court that he is a better wizard, for lack of a better term. The things that he says become true. He fixes a lot of problems that Merlin just can't even come close to solving. So he tries to trip up Sir Boss at every opportunity. So anyway, I find that it's a good book. It's definitely worth reading, but it's not amazing. It's worth reading, but I think that the the much superior work was Huckleberry Finn, who in a very similar style has uh, these picaresque moments where it's just it's a series of adventures, yet obviously there's social commentaries in there, and it's a little bit easier because the story is much more the story of Huckleberry Finn is much more plausible, um, and because it deals with little boys, or Huckleberry Finn uh, is, I don't know, probably about 12 or 13, and Tom Sawyer is about 10. That throughout Huckleberry Finn, that kids like Tom Sawyer um, is a little bit of a shit stirrer, just a little bit of, full of nonsense. And anyway, so the thing is, like, I really enjoy Mark Twain's work. My parents have the collected works, or at least the collected fictional works, which the thing is, the book is so thick that it's like reading a dictionary. It's kind of an unwieldy book, where if you have these little things, you can read it, put it in a little bag, take it with wherever you go. If you wanted to read the big Mark Twain tome, you're going to have to commit to reading it either on the spot or only in one place, like at home. But it's just too big and bulky, to be honest with you. So, um, yeah, like I said in the last video, I really enjoy talking on this video. I only done one of these little tea time things, sort of mid to late afternoon tea time, right? It's a habit that I picked up in England, or just continued because I always drank tea, but sort of a mid afternoon pick me up. I enjoy, even though no one watches, I enjoy talking about it as if I'm talking to a friend. My friend is the camera, and if you happen to be watching, you are my friend. So it's nice to talk about nothing. Even you can sort of put some meaning into uh, into it now and again, but it's nice just to kind of catch up. I guess I'm catching up with myself and sort of giving myself a bit of a um, debriefing of what's happened in the last few days. I've sort of made a bit of a resolution. It's not like a New Year's resolution, but it's sort of a resolution. I recently have been watching YouTube videos, and there was one guy who is a psychologist whose name eludes me. It's not Jordan Peterson. This guy is a sort of expert in depression, and I've sort of been coming through the literature, at least sort of more popular style literature rather than scientific findings. And basically he was talking about what depression is, how it works, how it sort of eats at you, and things like that. And he basically has come to a couple of conclusions that basically you kind of have to be very careful on how you behave. So he said basically just to avoid alcohol is one of the major things. I suppose if you have wild mood swings, alcohol only makes it worse. Um, but he also mentioned something about, trying to control your environment for positive yet realistic um, environment. So in a sense of like, I got that. Basically, I'm sort of giving my interpretation, but filtering it through my own eyes. Is that I shouldn't be watching a lot of news or news commentary or things like that because um, it's mostly negative crap. The news is mostly designed to get you pissed off. Um, and if it succeeds in that, you continue to watch because they'll piss you off by showing you something. Usually, it's kind of either warped or totally made up, and then like, oh, you get really upset about something, and then suddenly. Here's the next bit, and so they almost kind of hook you in the same way that like a soap opera would, or if you've ever watched the show Lost, where they kind of leave you hanging at the end of every episode, but at the next episode that there's going to be they're going to solve that problem, but there's going to be another problem afterwards. Um, so, which is fine in drama, but if you get emotionally charged, like I was saying about patriotism, that patriotism is about loyalty to the land, and if you feel like these evil people somewhere outside who are voting against the things that you like, then they're destroying your country. That might be true, but then again, it's not a very healthy attitude to take. As far as just getting around day to day, just getting by, you can't really think that way and still be sort of a well-adjusted human being. And if you already have some emotional problems like depression or anxiety or God knows what else, the news is the worst thing in the world for you. So I've sort of taken it upon myself to avoid the news whenever possible. And I started thinking about it. What do I need the news for? It's filling me in on information that I want to know. So if I want to know what the weather is, or if it's going to be rainy tomorrow, well, that's helpful if I wanted to go outside, right? Or if I'm traveling, anything that has to do with outside the house. Um, that's more functional, right? Or if I wasn't able to watch the football, I wanted to check out the scores of the football games and some highlights, because it is entertainment. And then sort of, maybe a sort of predictions or at least sort of, a little run up to the Super Bowl itself. That's entertainment. The thing is that the entertainment aspect of the news is actually you don't go there looking for sort of political analysis in that sense. You know that you're in it just for political, I mean not for political, but actually for sports entertainment. That's all it is. That's all you want is just to watch amazing catches, amazing throws, idiotic clock management, things like that. Um, that's the entertainment. It's the highs and lows of the sport. Um, but with that said, I mean, you think like if you've studied, I think everybody who can actually understand what I'm talking about know that the media makes stuff up, and that is their business model is to make stuff up, or at least twist it to the point where it winds you up to the point where you're addicted because you want to be wound up more than you want to hear good news or no news at all. Um, so if you turn that off, I think it's funny that I have a couple of Facebook friends whom I have not seen in donkey's years. Uh, I and they do not really align with me politically. You know I'm not a super political person. I don't belong to any political parties. If you would say anything about me, is I'm fairly libertarian in the sense of I don't really want to tell you to live your life in the way I want you to live your life. Um, I don't want to sort of bully you about coronavirus things. We in theory are all in this together, but we're not in this together. Obviously, uh, we're not. We're in the same situation together, but we're not pulling together as a team. That's fine if you don't believe how to handle things the same way as I do. That's fine, but it's just holding someone down and making them take medicine or a vaccine is just wicked. Um, but that said, is these people, obviously I liked them at some point in my life, and I had a you know these people were important to me. Obviously, time kind of fades the warmth of friendships and relationships, especially with distance involved. Um, but you still have positive feelings towards this person. And yet they say just nasty, nasty things, like remarkable, nasty, nasty things. And I can't stand it. I can't stand being called names. Because when people make these Facebook posts, they make all kinds of sweeping generalizations about anybody who doesn't believe exactly what they believe. And ultimately, if you follow that logic, everybody else is an asshole because even if you're like 99% on the same page, uh, there's that 1% left over where you're going to come out, punching each other. I think it was Ronald Reagan who said something like 90% uh, ally and is or something 10 was 80-20, so 80% an ally is not 20% my enemy. So just because you have differences doesn't make you evil. Um, and I just think that sort of, we just step away from the news, we don't live our lives. This is what the pandemic did. It took millions of people, put them in their home, locked the key, told them you can't move for 6 months. You can have internet, and we're going to do a bunch of controversial things. Um, and all you can do is moan about it on the internet. So how is that ever going to be? How is that ever going to end up well? So, as far as I'm concerned, I am withdrawing from Facebook. I won't say permanently. They do like to keep lines of communications out. I've learned that that's an important thing if you want to get better. Uh, from a depression standpoint, is that you shouldn't be cutting off the world. Yet, this is a little bit different. This is world is depressing you. So you basically just sort of lock. I actually changed the password to one of those random character generator password things, uh, and just put it in there, uh, and didn't save the password. And anytime I want to go into Facebook, I have to regenerate the password. Sort of get the email notification and then sign back in. So it has to be a huge annoying process for me to get back into Facebook, which sounds like the end of the world, but it's amazing. It's been a few days. I was like, that temptation you have to go, look, I can't. You kind of have to trick yourself. You have to sort of lay little traps for yourself. It's almost like you have this strategic war against your weaker inner self, who succumbs to temptation, who wants to look at all this stuff, even though you know it's bad for you. Uh, you just want to get wound up about it. So I've sort of decided I'm going to do that. And it's been a few days. And the results are great. I recommend anyone do that. Also, avoid the news. I'm on YouTube watching, documentaries about, things that happened 100 years ago, 1,000 years ago, 3,000 years ago. It's great. There are politics in it, but there's not current politics. You're not emotionally. The further back in time, less emotionally attached you get to the situation. So I love it. I listen to a lot of music. I try to keep things as positive as possible, not because I'm one of these like little rays of sunshine, but I'm just surviving. So thanks for watching. If you've got this far, if not, I've just moaned and just talking to myself, which is it works for me. So I'll talk to you soon. See you later. Bye.